Ah,
Yes, do something with the lights.
no, we're
Okay, we're live.
All right, I guess we're live. Thanks for the warning.
I didn't know. All of a sudden, you're on the screen.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us for our Pride 2022 Keynote event. I'm Juancarlos. I'm the Deputy Director of the New Haven Pride Center, and my pronouns are he, him, his, it. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land in which we are hosting this event. The New Haven Pride Center was founded and operates on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, Massachusetts, Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Scoticoke, Golden Hope, Patuxent, Niantic, and Quinnipiac peoples. We ask that you please take a moment to acknowledge and honor the Native people whose lands you occupy and the history of the place you're in. To learn more about Native lands, please visit native-land.ca. Today's event is part of Pride New Haven 2022. 25 events, 8 days, pretty amazing. Pride New Haven runs through the end of this week with over 25 events, like I said. There is something for everyone, and we invite you to visit newhavenpridecenter.org to get all the information about this year's programming, and we have a lot. We would like to thank all of our sponsors of Pride New Haven 2022, which include Gotham City Cafe, Healthcare Advocates International, Black Rock Social House, Partners Cafe, Circle Care Center, the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven, the City of New Haven, and the State of Connecticut. And for tonight, we would like to give a special thank you to Puerto Ricans United, which I'm on the board of, Progressive Latino Fund, and the Progressive Community Theater for hosting us in this amazing, beautiful space. I would like to acknowledge before we begin John Allen, who is the founder of the New Haven Pride Center. Thank you for being here with us. And before we begin, I want to invite Magali Cajitas to give a few words on behalf of the Puerto Ricans United and Progressive Latino Fund. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Magali Cajitas. I'm a development manager for the Community Foundation. So I just want to say thank you to the New Haven Pride Center for always looking to us to help and assist with programs that are being hosted, because I really feel strongly that this is an important part and it's so impactful for the community as a whole, as much as those individuals that are struggling and are looking for support, and we should be giving that olive branch to everyone, because everyone deserves to live however they want to live. No one is above anyone else. So I'm really happy that we're having this discussion here and presenting this. So I say thank you from the Community Foundation, the Progressive Latino Fund, and also Puerto Ricans United that I'm on the board of. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm going to introduce our speaker. Pedro is going to come up here, give us a little speech, and then I'm going to come back on stage, and then if you folks have questions, I'm going to be running the mic, and we'll be taking it from there. So, Pedro Julio Serrano. Yeah? Can you hear me? So I'm very happy to be here in New Haven. It's my second time here, so thank you so much to Patrick, to Juancarlos, and to the New Haven Pride Center. I'm very, very happy to join you and to be here with you. I'm also very happy that I have some friends that have come from Puerto Rico, which are Danny and Carlos, my brothers that are here, so thank you. And thank you for everyone who made this possible. I think it's very important that we acknowledge that even though Puerto Rico is a geographical area, that we're an archipelago in the Caribbean, we're more than that. Actually, the more people, more Puerto Ricans live outside Puerto Rico than in Puerto Rico. And we need to acknowledge that as well. We have like 5 million of us living in the US, and we have only like 3 million living in Puerto Rico. So we need to acknowledge that Puerto Rico is much more than a geographical area. We're a community that lives, across the world, and this is why it's important that we connect those dots and we connect those communities, from Puerto Rico and also in the diaspora. So thank you for having this discussion. So let me tell you a little bit about Puerto Rico and LGBTQ plus rights. We've had a very amazing history of struggle that predates Stonewall. And because everyone thinks that everything started at Stonewall, and it's not true. In Puerto Rico, we were fighting even before Stonewall, and we were already creating organizations that were building a society for everyone in Puerto Rico. So we need to acknowledge that, you know. And because of that struggle and that work, we have achieved momentous victories in Puerto Rico. For example, just to give you a taste, Puerto Rico is number 20 out of 56 states and territories in terms of LGBTQ plus rights. We're far more advanced than the majority of states and territories when it comes to legislation, to protections, to rights that are afforded to LGBTQ plus people in Puerto Rico. And that doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's because we have been organizing since a long time ago. And you know, I want to lift up, just to name a few, some of the folks who I stand on their shoulders because they created the path so I can do what I'm doing right now. I've been doing this for 25 years. On October 14th of this year, it's my 25th anniversary of being an activist. But before that, a lot of people came before. And you know, now we have the first openly LGBTQ plus senator in Puerto Rico, which is Anaíma Rivera Lacen. She's an Afro-Boricua who, before 1970, she was already organizing for the LGBTQ plus community. And she was one of the founders of the first colectivo gay that started to do work in Puerto Rico to organize, and now she is a senator. You know, she's the first openly LGBTQ plus senator in Puerto Rico. So we've come a long way from where she started. And she started before Stonewall to do this work, you know. We also have a Soraya Santiago. She was a trans woman who died last year after a bout with cancer. But in the 1970s, she got her birth certificate changed with the gender marker. When nobody was talking about trans people and getting the correct birth certificate, she got her birth certificate. She went to court, she fought for it, and she got her birth certificate. And she changed the gender marker of her birth certificate. You know, and this was in the 1970s. And not only that, she got married to a man back then. So she was a courageous woman, a courageous trans, wonderful woman, iconic woman, that paved the way for what we have now, you know. And then 4 decades later, we finally got that with a lawsuit that we had in Puerto Rico, which Puerto Rico Para Todes, which is the organization that I founded, was a plaintiff. We finally got that trans individuals can change their birth certificate with the correct gender marker. And that happened, you know, 40 years later after she did it on her own, just by herself, with the support of her mother. You know, so we need to uplift those stories because we need to know our history, to know where we have been, and that what we have now didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because a lot of people, you know, stood up and fought, and there were tears, and there were blood, and there were sacrifices that were made, and we got our rights, and you know, we're still not where we need to be, but we have paid a long way. So I'm just giving you a little bit of history, and I don't want to, you know, because I want to hear the questions from Juancarlos, and I want to hear the questions from you. But what I just want to say with this is that we need to feel very, very proud of what we have achieved in Puerto Rico with very little resources, because most of the work that is done in Puerto Rico is volunteer driven. Not only until like 3 or 4 years ago was that when we got paid staff in organizations to do LGBTQ plus rights work. We didn't have paid staff until like 3 or 4 years ago in the organizations in Puerto Rico. All of this work has been done voluntarily. So that tells you that we are doing this with a lot of passion, with a lot of heart, and we need to be very proud of what we have achieved with so little, but with a lot of passion and with a lot of heart, con mucho corazón, con mucho poder, and that, you know, I feel very fortunate, and I want to say this before we enter this discussion, that I'm privileged because I'm a man, but the struggle in Puerto Rico has been mostly led by women, and we need to also uplift that Puerto Rican women have been doing that work, have been doing this work, and we need to uplift that as well, because because of the patriarchy, and I have to say it, I have been more visible. But the work has been done by women, and we need to uplift that. And sometimes I have to take a step back and and let women stand to the front, because that's what a patriarchal society does. It invisibilizes the struggles and the achievements and the work that women do. So I want to put that also up front as we enter the discussion, because it's critical also that we mention that when we're talking about our experience in our Puerto Rican LGBTQ plus struggle. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and then I'll go with the questions. But yeah, at first I wanted just to talk about the incredible history that we have for so many years.
And thank you for sharing all of that. I think that was and as a Puerto Rican, I feel like I knew like a third of that. So I appreciate that now I have a lot of research to do when I get back home. So I think my first question is, where did you get those shoes? Because I want them.
So these are custom-made bands. I'm making an announcement, an unpaid announcement, but they are custom-made. You go on their website and that's the Puerto Rican LGBTQ plus flag.
Great.
So it has
Which we have a couple to
That's
give
right,
out.
they're in the back. So if you want one, you can get it. So everybody, it's a one at a time. I haven't seen anyone with those.
Well, I'm gonna make it around to this. So, just a quick plug, we already had a conversation previously called Boricua and Queer, where we gather a group of Puerto Rican activists and we're talking about what it means to be Puerto Rican and a member of the LGBTQ community, some incredible people, and that's where we first interacted. And I asked this question during that conversation, and I want to present it again. As a member of the Puerto Rican community that organizes and does events here in Connecticut, what are some of the ways that we can help the archipelago? What are some of the things that we can do to help out the fight?
Well, the first thing is to support the people that are doing the work in Puerto Rico. There are a lot of people that are doing amazing work, but they have very little resources. So we need support. If you can go online and donate to the people that are doing the work in Puerto Rico, that's a good way of doing it. I work for Ways Ahead, which is an organization that works for older adults, LGBTQ plus older adults, and other vulnerable communities. So that's one way. But there are many organizations that are doing that work. I think the second thing is you need to study our history. Because as I started, and that's why I started with this, is that if things don't happen just because they fall from the sky. It's because people have been doing the work. So we need to uplift those stories, because they show us a way, they show us a path of where we want to be and where we want to go, because they have done the work, they have done the struggle, and we need to know that story. And we need to support the people that are doing that work. And the other thing is come to Puerto Rico and join us. For example, we had, when Huracán Maria happened, we had volunteers, and there was a brigade of queer people that came to Puerto Rico. Carlos was one of them, who went to Puerto Rico and they rebuilt houses, and they did it for LGBTQ plus people that lost their houses. So the solidarity from the folks from the US came to Puerto Rico to help rebuild those houses, and it was called Reconstruye Q. And more than 25 houses were rebuilt because of that work. So be connected to what we're doing. Know who is doing the work, support who are doing the work, and then come to Puerto Rico and see for yourself what we're doing. And you can maybe teach us something, but you can also learn from what we're doing and how we're doing it, and maybe replicate that. So yeah, I think those three things are a good way to start.
I think we can start on that. And just for folks who don't know, just in case you don't know, Maria was this terrible hurricane that happened in Puerto Rico that pretty much, eviscerated the island. It was crazy. My own parents were there. I lost contact with them for 20 days, the worst 20 days of my life, of not knowing where my parents were. And there is still damage on the island. You still see broken buildings and things. We're still suffering the effects of the stuff with Luma like power grids, there's still a lot of work to do. So I think that even beyond the LGBTQ community, for the Puerto Rican community, there's a lot that we can do. Because I want to keep this light and fun, we have just been moving through the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's one of the many pandemics that we have experienced that has affected, I think, in a lot of ways, more severe than others, the LGBTQ community. What does it feel like? So, because I think a lot of like when we talk about HIV, this question is on my head because I was having a conversation with some folks in my office today about getting tested and PrEP and all these. And recently in Texas, they ruled that access to PrEP was unconstitutional. So, like, what does that look like in Puerto Rico? What does the HIV pandemic look like in Puerto Rico? Have you seen a lot of progress? Does it feel like we're making a dent in it? What does that feel like?
Well, I think we're moving in the right direction, but slowly. And the problem is, sometimes the problem is the government. They're still far behind what we should be doing. The community organizations are doing the work, the community is doing the work, the activists are doing the work, but the government is still behind. For example, we don't have a government-sponsored PrEP in Puerto Rico. We have good services for people who living with HIV. I was the executive director of the largest HIV clinic in Puerto Rico for 4 years, and we advanced a lot of the work, and we brought it to the 21st century, and it was great because people were getting services, and we have the services in housing, and we have others. But still, there's still a lot of education that needs to happen. For example, there are not a lot of public people who are openly HIV positive. I've been publicly HIV positive for 28 years, and I think that visibility helps, to make people understand that we are part of the island and we are part of our country, and that we need to be treated with respect. We have a Bill of Rights for people living with HIV, which is pretty progressive and advanced, and I think it could be a model for other territories and jurisdictions because it's very advanced, and it provides a way for people living with HIV to ask for any retribution or compensation or a grievance process if your rights as a person living with HIV is under attack. So I think that's a great thing that we can work on. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done. There's still not a lot of talk about being undetectable, being untransmissible, which I think is one of the things that is going to help us curb the epidemic and end the HIV epidemic. Is if we get everybody tested and everybody in treatment, everybody's undetectable, then everybody's untransmissible. So then we can end HIV with just that, And if we have PrEP also, then people can protect themselves. So I think that there's still a lot of education that needs to be done, and we're doing it in some capacity. But I would welcome more government involvement in this and more support, like for example having PrEP available and being able to talk about undetectable being untransmissible, and supporting the work that is being done by the community organizations as well.
Thank you. I wanted to open it up just in case if folks in the audience have questions, kind of check in before we continue the conversation. So I'm going to give you all a minute. And I'm good with Alex.
Sure. Just speak it out.
I don't know if my mic gets there.
Hello, thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you. In the beginning of the pandemic, we used to fly people from Puerto Rico here in an air bridge program. So there's a big change. It's like mind-blowing. That's the last time I heard of it. But now it sounds like Puerto Rico is doing better than Connecticut. The HIV rates are doing better than Connecticut. So what could you say to encourage Puerto Ricans or Latinx to get involved in Connecticut and make changes? We have a long way to go with falling behind other states.
So thank you for the question. I think community involvement is key, is critical. It's key. You have to get involved. You need to lobby your legislators. You need to sometimes you even have to write the bills. To create the laws that you want to see, because legislators probably don't know what we're living and what we're facing. So it has to come from the community. You have to write those bills. And in Puerto Rico, we have been very we have been part of that writing of those bills and those laws that eventually become law. Because they are our needs. They are what we need is what we have to put in there. So I think people need to get involved. People that work in government who are living with HIV or are LGBTQ plus or are women or need to talk to their legislators. If you work in government and you need to push them, when you're talking about LGBTQ plus people and you're discriminating against me, you're talking about me. That's one of the things what we have said to people that work in government and politics in Puerto Rico. You need to make yourself visible. You need to show up and tell them, every time you stand up and you try to get votes from the fundamentalist sector and you're bringing LGBTQ plus people down, you're talking about me. And I'm busting my ass for you every single day and getting votes for you. And then you're bringing me down. That's not acceptable. So you need to step up and you need to speak out. So, I think those are some ways that, people can get involved in creating these kind of laws probably here.
And the Bill of Rights, when was that put into place?
It was put into place in the early 2000s, and it was just recently amended to make it more enforceable and with more teeth.
Okay. Anybody have another question?
Isha?
You won't come out on camera. You can stand behind it. No. Magali.
I had a question just because since I work in philanthropy with the community foundation, I'm struggling because I'm wondering why is there other, I know that there's the San Juan Community Foundation, so I'm curious how much support, do they have funds created that help the LGBTQ community, or what's the struggle there? Because I'm thinking that if the marketing is being done and the word is getting put out there, what is holding people back from giving?
So for folks who are watching us, I'm going to repeat the question just to make sure that they listen if they didn't. What kind of support foundations are giving to the LGBTQ plus struggle in Puerto Rico? It's not enough. It's still too little. We are grasping to get funds to make sure that the programs that we're putting together are given. Puerto Rico, unfortunately, we don't have a donation culture. We don't have a development and a giving culture in Puerto Rico. The people from the community don't have that culture of donating to make sure that we have services and organizations that do the work for our community. We don't have that. It hasn't been created, so we need to work on that. That's one thing. The other thing is we need to make sure that the organizations and foundations in Puerto Rico that do fund projects and community-based organizations consider LGBTQ plus programming in their funding. It's still too little, we need to look to the United States who gets funding for Puerto Rico because the community foundations in Puerto Rico are not giving enough yet. But we are going after them. We go after them. So it's still a struggle, and the money is still not enough for the work that needs to be done in Puerto Rico. But we hustle and we do the work. We go after people and we try to do the best we can with the little money that we get, and we try to support as many people as possible. But yeah, it's still a struggle to get funds for the work in Puerto Rico for community-based organizations.
So New Haven Pride Center is one out of two LGBTQ centers in Connecticut. I'm wondering because I think it's only one, but how many LGBTQ centers serve the entire archipelago?
So based ahead, where I work, we have 4 community centers, and we have them in the 4 cardinal points of Puerto Rico. So we have one in San Juan, which is the capital. We have one in Loíza, which that is being in alliance with the Ricky Martin Foundation. It has a center in Loíza. It's called the Centro Tao. and we just opened services to provide services there. So that's the second one. We have one on the southeast part of the island, which is called Malnavo, and it was very close where the hurricane entered Puerto Rico, which it was devastated because the hurricane entered to Yabucoa, and it's like the town next to Yabucoa. There's in Malnavo. There's Cabo Rojo, where I live. That's the southwest part of the island, and we're gonna open a fifth one, and the last one we're gonna open it in Isabela, which is on the northwest part of the island. So the whole island is going to be covered because one of the things that we have discovered is that most organizations and most services are given to the metropolitan area, but we forget the rest of the island, and that cannot be, that cannot be true. We need to be where people are, and because, if we are going to serve vulnerable populations, we need to go to them. They can come to us. We need to go to them. So that's why we open in those areas. And just to give you an example, in Cabo Rojo, where I live, we have Orgullo Boquerón, which is the largest pride celebration in Puerto Rico. We get more than 20,000 people each year, and it's huge. So Cabo Rojo was like a place that we said, okay, we're gonna open this, and so the centers are there. We're giving the services. We're getting to the people, but it's still not enough. We need to do more.
Yeah, someone who's from Calle, from the mountains, that's really exciting to hear that's spreading around, because typically it spreads to the inner metro. And I know that like the last, I want to say 2 years have been particularly violent in Puerto Rico against trans folk. I'm wondering if you can give a little bit of insight into that.
Yeah, unfortunately, Puerto Rico has had a long and sad history of hate crimes. In the 1980s, we had a serial killer, which was named El Ángel de los Solteros. He killed 27 gay and bisexual men, 27. And when the police was asked what they thought of these crimes, because they had the same modus operandi, and I don't want to go into the gory details because they're horrible, but this killer tortured the victims before he killed them. And when they asked the police, they said, "Oh no, we're not going to investigate those crimes because they're cleaning up the scum of the society. So, we're not going to do anything." It wasn't until a TV journalist was killed that the police finally investigated and caught the killer. And they only charged him for 5 of those crimes, but he confessed to kill 27 of people. So we had that's the history. And for example, we had another case that was widely known, which was for Steven Lopez Mercado. He was a 19-year-old gay man who that day was he was on the streets, and this guy killed him and dismembered him and burned him. And that was like the first time that Puerto Rico looked in the eyes and saw that homophobia could kill. I think it was a realization that homophobia is not only words and attacks and aggressions and bullying, but also it can kill. And that was in 2009, I think, that it happened. And we had vigils. It was like a Matthew Shepard, in Puerto Rico. And then we had, just recently, in 2020, we had 7 trans people who were murdered, 5 women and 2 trans men. And one of them was Alexa. Alexa was a Black Puerto Rican homeless trans woman who, for many years, the fundamentalist leaders on the island have been saying, trans people that go into the bathroom are perverts and they're after your children. And, so when you would say a lie over and over again, people started believing it. So this guy took a picture of Alexa, put it on social media, called her a pervert, called the police on her, and then it went viral. Everybody it went viral on social media. people then started posting pictures or where she was located. She was at this gas station and she was at this supermarket. So 24 hours later, she was found dead. They killed her. They not only they lynched her, they persecuted her, they posted her picture, they posted her whereabouts, and then 24 hours she was found dead. And not only that, a few hours later, her murder was taped, was videotaped, and was posted on social media while what they were saying transphobic and homophobic slurs. So this is the realization in Puerto Rico that transphobia kills, but also that social media and going after people and bullying and harassing and attacking people and judging people just because you believe what somebody is lying about because they have their prejudice and they think that they believe the rhetoric from the fundamentalist religious leaders who are saying over and over again, these are perverts, these are perverts. So what they're giving permission to people to attack us and to be violent against us. So I always said that these fundamentalist leaders have blood on their hands because they were the intellectual murderers of Alexa, because they created this aggression against her. And they haven't found the murder yet, or the murderers. They found some people who attacked her with gotcha guns prior to her murder. But they don't want to talk, they don't want to say who killed her. So we still haven't had justice for her and for many others that have been killed. So the Puerto Rico in 2020, unfortunately, was the epicenter of anti-trans violence in the U.S. and the territories. It has gotten a little better, but it's still, we're under attack. And when you see Donald Trump, when you see Republicans, when you see these fundamentalist leaders, when you see this hateful, rhetoric against us, you know that we're under attack. And there's a war against us, and we need to defend ourselves. But it's not a war that is our choosing. We're only defending ourselves from the attacks. And it's not only us, also immigrant communities are being under attack. Women are being under attack. There are a lot of people who are under attack. But we need to stand up and fight back and say, this is not who we are, and we need to stand up, and we need the solidarity of people. So after Alexa was killed, an outpouring of support, and I know that a lot of regret also, because a lot of people who shared the picture on social media then were regretting that they were part of a murder because they were complicit in murdering someone. So I think it was an eye-opening situation in Puerto Rico that sometimes you don't understand why things happen, but we lose lives in this process, and it doesn't have to be that way.
I want to give an opportunity to folks in the audience for any additional questions.
Pedro Julio, welcome to New Zealand. I've been a follower of yours for quite a while. Yes. And I was wondering, have you ever thought, and I think I may have asked you this question before online, have you ever thought of getting into politics? Because you are a very good speaker. You filled me with animal. What's the word? Animal. And I've been in that position before, and we could use more gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender politicians here in the States. I'm sure you're pretty good. I know you worked in New York for a while, and you got a pretty good taste of politics in New York. What do you think? Would you get into politics?
Well, I started my activism in politics because I was the first openly gay and HIV-positive political candidate in the history of Puerto Rico to run for office. Unfortunately, homophobia back then was very, very, very harsh. I received death threats. The political party I was a part of didn't support me, so I had to withdraw my candidacy. I had attempts against my life because they cut the cables from my car, and They left notes in my house, and I was followed many times, even with my mom in my car. That prompted me to go to New York for my safety at some point. I lived in New York for 10 years. And I went back to Puerto Rico because I wanted to come back to contribute to society and to my community. And I don't say that I will come back to politics, but the price that you have to pay for being a public figure, I know that not only in Puerto Rico but other places, and being open about who you are, it's very high. They have fabricated cases against me. The government has persecuted me. As I said, I've received death threats. I'm one of the most vilified public figures in Puerto Rico because of the work that I do, because I'm very vocal and I'm very visible. And I don't say that I don't say this to try to because I don't think anybody would want to say I'm one of the most vilified people in Puerto Rico, but I am, and it's very difficult, and it's very hard for my family. I don't give a fuck, and I'm sorry if I say it here, but what people say or do about me. And my family knows it. I don't care, but it takes a toll. It's hard. And as I'm talking right now, I can get a little emotional because sometimes you put a brave face and you say, as I just said, I don't give a fuck. But it's hard, especially for the family, especially for friends, and because you don't want to be a statistic and you don't want to be a martyr either. You want to do the work, but you want to do it in a safe way, and you want to do it in a way that you can contribute and that you can make a difference, and what difference can you make, then? There's no difference you can do with that. So the short answer is that I don't want to go into politics, but I don't say no, because my mom taught me that you should never say no. But for now, I'm happy doing the work I'm doing, and I'm trying to encourage other people to run for office and to be more visible and to sit back and put the stage on them and trying to get them to run. That's why we have an Academy of Leadership and Training that we just created a year and a half ago, and we are giving the skills to activists to make sure that the torch is passed and that they can continue the struggle, and that other voices can come to the stage and can come to the front, and especially other voices and other life experiences, because I'm only gay, but there are a lot of different experiences of our LGBTQ plus community, non-binary, queer, gender non-conforming, pansexual, bisexual. There are other folks that are out there that need to be recognized and lifted up as well. So you need to give the space to them to do the work also, and to continue to open the ways, because I learn from them as well. I have my own experiences, but I can learn from them. So we created this Academy of Leadership and Training. Our next one is going to be in February, and we're doing that. We're creating a policy institute, because in Puerto Rico the government doesn't do statistics around gender identity or sexual orientation. So we need to create our own statistics and our own reports and our own research. So we're creating that as well. So there are a lot of things I have learned in my 25 years, that you don't have to be in politics to make a difference, and you don't have to be in politics to make some change. Sometimes you can do much more from the outside. Even if you have to throw some rocks, to make sure that you break some glasses and you break some things, you do it. But then when you have to work with the folks that are inside, then you push them, because you have the moral authority to convey the message and to force them to do the right thing. So it has worked for me to be an outsider better than being an insider. So for now, I'm good doing that, throwing rocks.
We had to do in Connecticut, we had to do a similar thing, where we had to do a survey to get that Patrick, our executive director, was pretty much leading that charge of getting all these people to take the survey and all the data, and then we had the first guide last year, was it?
The first ever LGBTQ needs assessment survey.
So the first ever LGBTQ needs assessment survey was done in 2021, right?
Started in 2020,
started in 2020, and then because of the pandemic, sort of got a little jumbled. But yeah, so we have the same thing here.
Because we have to do it. And one of the things that I want to say about the history of what we have achieved, I want to say this because we haven't said it. Puerto Rico has had a history that has achieved rights before the U.S. has done it. For example, before the United States Supreme Court struck down the sodomy laws in the United States and the territories, Puerto Rico Senate voted to struck down the sodomy law in Puerto Rico. And we need to make sure that we're proud of that. And in Puerto Rico, just to give you an example, when I was born in 1974, the penal code in Puerto Rico was amended to add 7 years to the sentencing if you were gay in Puerto Rico. That's the sodomy law. It was only 3 years, and they were amending it to make it more progressive, and they put 7 more years, so it was 10 years. So until 2003, people in Puerto Rico who were LGBT could have been put in prison for 10 years just for being LGBTQ+. So we were criminals under the law. Criminals. Put that in your head. We were criminals. And it was until 2003 that we stopped being criminals, you know? And we got that passed before the U.S. Supreme Court did it. You know, it was only weeks before, but we did it before. And that counts. And that counts. We also had Puerto Rico Para Todes, which was the organization that I founded. We were plaintiffs in 2 major cases that won victories for our community, which was a marriage equality case, because we were brought in with 4 couples, and Puerto Rico Para Todes was the plaintiff, and we got that because even though the United States Supreme Court, ruled for marriage equality, we needed that case to make sure that when the decision was handed down, it also applied to Puerto Rico because we're a territory. So we made sure that, and we won that case as well. And then we had another case, which was to make sure that transgender people could change their gender marker in the birth certificate, and we also got that. That was a victory that we got. We have a non-discrimination law in employment that was passed in 2013, and we have protections for LGBTQ+ people in domestic violence law. Trans people can change their driver's license to make sure that their gender marker on their name is correct. We have a gender perspective curriculum in schools to make sure that we teach our kids, to respect not only gender equality, but also sexual orientation and gender identity. And we have so much more. We have defeated attempts in Puerto Rico to amend the Constitution to prohibit marriage equality. We have defeated anti-trans bills to keep trans people from sports or from gender affirming surgery and therapy. So we have made great strides in Puerto Rico, and we need to make sure that we uplift that and be very proud of what we have achieved with so little in Puerto Rico. And I didn't want to close the
You actually anticipated my question. I wanted to end it on that note. And also just a shout out to our producer who really enjoyed when he said, "I don't give a fuck."
Yeah.
I instantly got a text message with yes, so I just wanted to give a shout out. So thank you for anticipating my question. One more thing that we have for you, a little surprise here. The office of our amazing rep, Rosa Delora, wanted to give you a certificate of special recognition to you for all of the work that you have done for the people of Puerto Rico and also for being So, Patrick, do you have anything to add before we wrap? Just not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Well, thank you everyone for being here with us and having this conversation with us. I want to remind everyone that Pride continues. Our last day is Sunday. Tomorrow we have Drag on the Edge. On Thursday we have a concert with Pink Navel and Indigots, right? Indigo, sorry. I changed the name like 3 times today. And then on Friday we have our Mixed New Haven pageant. On Saturday we have Pride Fest starting at noon to 7. We are back on the green, so we're really excited about that. It's been a lot of fun for us, and then on Sunday we'll wrap up our celebrations with our tea dance and drag brunch at Damn Tequila, hosted by Kiki Usha.
And before we leave, I want to say hello to my family, Papi. I love you, and my brothers, and everybody. And also, someone very special is watching. And he told me not to say anything, but Ricky Martin is watching. Because, and other folks from Puerto Rico, Maite, Dina, and Vanessa, and other folks, I love you all. I'm glad that you were listening and always supporting the work that we do. So just wanted to say that, because they're watching.
Sí, no, que personas un poco más. Well, thank you so much for being willing to be here with us. It means a great deal to me as a gay Puerto Rican living in the diaspora, and just to have you here. A big shout out to Rafael. Thank you so much for allowing us to do this event. But is a special place for me in my heart. This is where I started my first youth organized. I had a youth camp, leadership camp, and sort of like, I think, mid-afternoon, I called up and I was like, I have this crazy idea, I want to do this camp, and I hold it up Regamos. And he said yes, and that ever since, I know that I can lean on Rafael for anything. So thank you for opening this space for us to have that. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. So that's it. That's all we got, folks.